Hi Foxes, and welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, welcome. My name is Brittany and I am also known as SHOPFOXBURROW on sites like Poshmark and Etsy, Instagram, and here on YouTube. And today I thought I would come at you with another shorter video. Today we're going to be tackling 5 things that I do not typically pick up when I'm outsourcing for my vintage shop or just shopping for resale in general. I feel like a lot of people talk about things that they're looking for, things that they love to pick up, but I don't hear a ton of people talking about things that they don't like to pick up because they don't traditionally have a good return on their time and investments. So I thought that I would go ahead and tackle that today. Hopefully the white balance in this video is okay. I'm not sure. So anyway, we're just going to jump right in, and the first thing that I don't really like to pick up, now there are going to be exceptions to every rule, but in general I do not like to pick up button-up shirts for resale or for vintage, especially if they are after the 70s. I find that because it's such a specific fit, it's very tricky to find the right buyer, and a lot of them are very plain. So unless they have some kind of really cool novelty print on them, or they're just like a roomier fit that might give people more room to work with, I typically don't pick up a lot of button-up shirts. I do sometimes pick them up if they are from like the 40s to the early 60s, especially if they have that cute Peter Pan collar. People do like basics, but you're not going to get a ton of money for a basic white shirt, even if it does have a cute like collar. So in general, that's one of the categories that I kind of shy away from buying because the fit and the prints usually aren't there, and I find that they don't sell for a lot and they take a while to sell. So that's the first one. The second thing that I don't typically pick up a lot of, and you kind of see this reflected in my shop, is actually shoes. Shoes, especially vintage shoes, can be very difficult to find quality ones. So a lot of times you might not notice until you get home, but like the sole might be coming off, or it's missing a heel cap, or the leather is cracking, or the interior is cracking on the inside of the shoe. And a lot of times people are looking like at the outside of the shoe and not necessarily the inside. They are also very hard to, like, even the sizes, they can be a little narrower than modern shoes. So a lot of times people will get it and it's like a 7.5, and they say that's their size, and they get it and it's like a little bit too small. Maybe the toe box is a little small. I know that I've had this problem personally, just with vintage shoes that I've purchased online. And so in general, I find that I really have to do like a lot of checking, like twisting the shoe, listening for leather cracking, looking at the interior of the shoe, seeing if the insert is coming up and it's going to need to be glued down, making sure it has heel caps. My one exception to this rule is kind of vintage boots, especially vintage leather boots. Those do really, really well. I actually am completely out of leather boots right now, and vintage boots in general, they sell very quickly and for a good amount. So I will pick up boots, but again, there's just a lot of checking that goes into it, and the return on investment I feel is a little bit better for boots than it is for just like regular heels. So unless I can get them at the bins and they're in good shape, I kind of tend to stay away from vintage shoes for those reasons. The third thing that I don't especially like to pick up for my business is men's vintage. It can do really well, if you find the right buyer. But compared to the number of women who wear vintage, the number of men who wear vintage is just not as large. And men who wear like dapper style vintage or like vintage from specific eras, they're very picky. They're very picky buyers. And so I generally find it just a little more tedious to list men's clothing, because it really has to be a good style. It has to be in really nice condition, and I just feel like it doesn't sell as quickly unless it's more of like a unisex type of style. So I don't tend to pick it up as much. I feel like if you're going to dive into men's vintage, then jeans and jean jackets and t-shirts are a really awesome way to start. Those are kind of unisex. They can sell to anyone, and there's definitely a market for those things. But if you're going more towards like the dapper vintage, like zoot suits and like, you know, 60s or 70s like sets or pinstripe, you know, it's just a little more specific, and you have to find the right buyer. And when you do, they're very picky. Like they want that quality, and they don't want to have to deal with stains or other issues. And so I'm a little bit pickier when it comes to men's vintage. Number 5 is actually coats, which might be surprising because they can be a really, really good return on your investment. The only thing is they're usually priced a little bit higher in the stores, and they are so bulky. So they do sell, but sometimes they have to sit for a little bit to get that return on your investment that you need, and they take up a lot of space. So I either have to hang them in my cedar closet or in my hall closet, or I bag them and put them in a tub, like ready for shipping. And they're definitely big, and they weigh a lot, and I get a lot of questions from people about, you know, like, can this be shipped cheaper? And it's like, no, it's like an 8-pound coat, you know, it is what it is. So with the vintage coats, I do tend to really keep my eye on like what is trending, the popular colors. If it is a basic sort of like black coat, or just something that, you know, like that ubiquitous like 1950s swing coat with like the 3 buttons down the front and the mink collar, like I won't pick those up anymore. They're a dime a dozen. There's a lot out there. So I have to make sure that my coats have something about them that is maybe not as typical. So it might be the color, it might be a plaid, it might be the shape of it, it might be the material, it might just be in really, really, really nice shape. But in general, I'm a little more picky with coats, and it's not the first place I go to in the thrift store. Sometimes if I just happen upon one and it's an affordable price, I'll pick it up. But again, I really have to think about that storage space and how long it's going to take to sell. So that's not my first stop at the thrift. And the last thing, number 5, is blazers in the same sort of vein as coats and button-up shirts. I find that they can be a very specific fit, very specific measurements. People want them to be able to button up. They take up a lot of space, and typically you're gonna see about $30 to $35 for a vintage blazer. And to me, that's just not worth the space that it takes up to store it, or the price that I would have to pay for it usually, unless I'm like bins shopping, which still they're heavy. So that one's kind of a toss-up for me. I do have exceptions to this, of course, just like I have exceptions for everything. Plaid blazers can be really good, especially if they're of the vein of like English countryside or equestrian or riding. Giorgio Sant'Angelo blazers are always on my pickup list because they're a really quick flip, and he is well known for his collectible gold line. And 70s velvet or velveteen blazers are also on my list. And then of course, if you find anything from like the 30s, the 40s, those can be really good money makers as well. But then you have to check to make sure like the quality is there, because as you get older, then you start to have more like issues cropping up with the lining or moth holes or things like that. So those are the 5 things that I don't gravitate towards at the thrift store, and I really second guess myself if I am going to pick up one of those items. And so I just want to make sure if I'm buying one of those 5 items that it's going to sell, and I'm relatively confident that it's going to sell quickly. So leave me a comment down below and let me know what's one thing that you tend to stay away from at, you know, when you're out sourcing. If you're at an estate sale and you see something, do you pick it up, or like what's running through your head? Let me know what you stay away from and what you love to source, and I'll be back at you with another video very soon. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.